Hi there. So today we're going to talk about James Monroe. All right, so he's the fifth president of the United States. Okay. All right, so here's some vocabulary that you should know. First is the era of good feeling. So, feeling of unity and patriotism in the country, a sense of naturalism. So, just a time when the country just felt united and patriotic. The Monroe Doctrine was a document issued by James Monroe, which prohibited European countries from colonizing westward. And the Florida census, Spain seceded from Florida to the United States for $5 million. So basically, we bought Florida from Spain. All right, so this are your vocabulary. Make sure you write them down in your journal. Okay, let's continue. Oh, and just pause the video and write it down or get it from your PowerPoint. All right. So James Monroe, like I said, he was the fifth president of the United States. You don't have to write this one down. He was a Democratic Republican. All right. So from 1820 to 1825, after the War of 1812, there was a big increase in nationalism. All right, which was just a feeling of unity and patriotism. So that's the era of good feeling. There was only one party at that time, which was the Republican Party. Okay, so here's your next note. So during the era of good feeling, like I said, it was after the War of 1812. More people started to feel united, and they had a lot of pride in their country. So write that down. Both political parties united into one party. So there was a Federalist and Anti-Federalist. They came together, and under that party came President James Monroe. So go ahead and write that down. Pause the video if you need to. All right, I'm going to continue. So like I said, this is the era of good feeling. So make sure to put that as your title, or just write that out. However your teacher in 8th grade does it. I do a little different with my kids. All right, here's a video on this slide. You're gonna watch it on your own. I'm not gonna play it because you're not gonna hear it from here. So on your own, watch that video. It just talks about the era of good feeling. All right. Sectionalism. All right. So sectionalism, like if you look where it says section, just means like a section. All right. They just put lism is for more vocabulary purpose, I guess. So it's putting the interest in a region above the country. So remember, a region is a small part of the country. The different ideas and beliefs about states' rights and slavery led to sectionalism in the North and the South. So they were kind of disputing, different rights for different states. Remember, some states were free states, some states were slave states. So remember everything here. Like a lot of these states here are, free states. These were considered free states at the time when they became part of our country. Yeah, but a lot of these were free states, and everything down here, mostly in the South, were slave states. This was not our territory yet. Okay, but everything in dark gray were slave states, so that's where they would own slaves. And that's where a lot of agriculture was taking place. So John C. Calhoun, all right, he was a supporter of the war against England, supported states' rights in the South, so he supported slavery basically. Placed the interest of his state of South Carolina above the nation. So he wanted South Carolina to do better than the country, basically. And that's who he was. He looks kind of creepy with that little mark right there, I think. Then we have Daniel Webster. So he was from the North. So he spoke against sectionalism. He didn't believe that we should separate. He believed that everybody should be in one union. All right. So the American system. So that was instituted by Henry Clay, who proposed tariffs. So tariffs, guys, if you don't remember, means taxes. So tariffs in 1816. Like I said, a tax, and that's a tax on imports. So things coming into the country, so like coming from China, Japan, and this time it was mostly Great Britain. First, protective tariffs protects American industry. He designed to help American industry and manufacturing. The second bank of the United States, that was remember we had the first bank, now we have a second bank, helped ensure financial stability and provided credit. So now we are giving credit, which is like money, but you have to, like, they give you money, but you have to pay it back. That's credit. Right. First bank had expired in 1811. International transportation improvement. So now we have more international transportation, like developing different kinds of modes of transportation. One was canals, which are boats taking people one way to another. Uh, Better roads. So here we're looking at protective tariffs. So you see in the United States, it costs $3 to produce a hat, and they add tax. Everything you buy has a tax. So if it's made in the United States, they charge $1. The total price of would be like $4 since it's from the United States. So it's basically just $4. Now, if you look at Great Britain, they also make a hat. It's a little cheaper. They add $1, but then they also add $1.05, 30% to sell the price of the tariff to Great Britain. Must pay the U.S. government to bring the hat into the United States to sell. All right. So even though they made it a little bit cheaper, they had to pay they had to add a tax for it, and then the country has to pay a tax, so they have to add a little bit more taxes to make some money, because they have to, if it's from outside the country, they have to pay a tariff, basically asking for permission to sell, so they have to pay, right? So that brings that hat total to 155. 455, excuse me. So why is that? Well, because we're of that tariff. That way, that is a way for our country to be able to not have to compete with other countries. Kind of making it a little bit more expensive for other countries to sell here. That way, other countries don't take advantage of us. Now we look at this here, the tariffs of 1832. So let me move this out of the way. So if you see here that agriculture, and then you see this guy here. So this guy looks very poor and raggedy. Even his ship is raggedy. But then you see manufacturing. This guy's super rich, and he has a nice building, even has a nicer boat, and he looks and dresses nice. So that's basically just saying, manufacturing makes more money than agriculture, and that a lot of people in agriculture did not like manufacturing because basically they made more money. And tariffs made a problem for that was because, a lot of stuff from the United States was expensive and a lot of stuff from Great Britain was cheap, but then they made it even more expensive. So now the people in agriculture, people less fortunate or a little bit more poor, are suffering because of tariffs. Missouri Compromise of 1820. So in the Missouri Compromise, southern states wanted Missouri to be admitted into the United States as a slave state. So they wanted Missouri, the state, to become a slave state. All right. The North wanted Missouri to be a free state. They didn't want slavery. Maine also appealed to be part of the U.S. So Henry Clay helped to work a compromise. Compromise is like they made a deal to keep a balance between the North and the South. So remember, the South wanted them to be a state, but they wanted them to have slaves. The North said no, that they didn't want to. All right. So the Missouri Compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state. It also abandoned slavery above the Missouri line. Temporary solution to the problem of slavery between the North and the South. So let's look at it here. So here's Missouri, and here's Maine. So this one is a free state, this one is a slave state, but they kind of divided it in half. That way, there was an equal balance of free states and slave states. They didn't want to have too many slave or free states. They wanted to be equal, because basically, like what they thought were, if there was more slave states, was they'd be more powerful. If there was more free states, it'd be more powerful. So they wanted to keep a balance. Here's a note that you need to write down. Remember, if you see like a note like 77 or 78, make sure you write that down. So this just breaks down the Missouri Compromise. All right, so Missouri wanted to admit the United States as a free, excuse me, it is ain't lunch. Missouri wanted to admit the United States as a slave state. Maine was admitted as a free state. Slavery was abandoned above the Missouri line. Okay, so write that down. Go ahead and pause the video. Make sure to write that down. If you don't have your binder at home, make sure just to write this down on a piece of paper. Okay, here's another one. that you write down. So basically, you're just gonna draw a simple map of the United States. Color Maine here, label it as a free state, and then color Missouri here, and label it as a slave state. Okay, just do the best you can. So just pause it, draw the map as best as you can. If you can't, it's okay. That one, don't worry too much about that one. If you can do it, just do it. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. So like I said, just pause it so you can try it. It's a video. We're not going to watch that. Okay, watch the video. It's a good video, guys. It gives you more insight on the Missouri Compromise. All right, so next, Henry Clay. He was known as the great compromiser. So compromiser is the person that, agrees to disagree and all that, So anyway, he tried to solve the sectionalism conflict through compromise, basically saying, you know what, if you give me this, I'll give you that, like trying to work it out so everybody's happy. Responsible for the Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850. So there was a lot of compromises throughout history. We still go through a lot of compromises today. A lot of deals in the United States government are, usually compromises. Instituted the American system, created a second bank, national bank, and protected tariffs. All right, so he was in charge of all that, or responsible for all of that. Sorry if I say a lot of these names wrong. Mccauley versus Maryland. So here, this was in 1890. Maryland tried to tax the Bank of the United States. Supreme Court ruled that a state could not tax a federal agency. We affirmed that national banks was constitutional. So this person here, he was in charge of, was, getting sued by Maryland, and the state bank said, you know what, or the not the state bank, the Supreme Court said that you can't tax a bank, or national bank, actually. All right. So there's a video explaining it. You guys can watch it on your own. Gibbons versus Ogden. Ogden. I have a hard time saying that word. So Ogden was is granted a monopoly by the United States to operate a steamboat between New York and New Jersey. So monopoly is basically you're the only one in charge, like nobody else. There's no competition. So, you're the one making all the money. I don't know if you ever played Monopoly, but the goal of Monopoly is to buy everything, so you're the one that gets all the money. All right, so Gibbons was granted a similar license by the federal government. Ogden sued to stop Gibbons from competing with him. So this guy got jealous because this guy was starting to take away his business. He was losing money. Supreme Court ruled that only the federal government could regulate interest of commerce, trade between states. So basically, they told this guy, you can't sue him. Adams-Onis Treaty. So this one was in 1890, and it's how we got Florida. So Spain seceded from Florida. They gave Florida to the United States. All right. The U.S. agreed to give up claims to Texas. So there was parts of Texas that we got from Louisiana Purchase. Because Spain said, hey, we'll give you Florida, they said that they would give us Texas. Now, the reason why we had this kind of trade-off was because we were planning to go to war with Spain, but Spain said, you know what, let's work it out. We'll give you Florida since it's connected to the 13 colonies, and you give us parts of Texas, and part of Texas is part of Spain. So they came to that agreement. That's a video talking about it. So go ahead and watch that video when you have the time. So here's the treaty. So basically, like I said, this was part of Spain, but they gave it up. And, all of this territory here was the Missouri territory, or the Louisiana Purchase. Part of it was, Texas. And Spain said, you know what, we want this part, the one in the red line. You see how part of it is part of the U.S. territory now? They said, you know what, give us this, and we'll give you this. So we agreed on it. Of course, eventually, over time, we just took over everything from Mexico once they seceded from Spain. Right. So James Monroe. So feared that Latin America would be colonized by European countries again. So he issued a statement called the Monroe Doctrine to stop Europeans' colonization in Latin America. So President Monroe was scared that um, other countries would try to colonize again, and he didn't want people from other countries coming in to the Americas, both North and South America. So he sent out a letter saying, "Hey, you guys are not allowed to come anymore." So it stated that the United States would not allow further European colonizations in Latin America or Western Hemisphere. The U.S. would stay neutral in European wars as well. So Monroe just said, you know what, we're not going to help out any other European countries during wars. We're not going to accept or let European countries come and colonize. If they want to come in, suppose they have to, become citizens or whatever. But he was not going to let other countries come and claim land for their country. He said that this is our land and we're going to claim the rest of the land that's here. So President Monroe did not want European countries to come back to colonize the Western Hemisphere, which is basically all this here, because a lot of this land was not claimed yet. So he told other countries, you know what, too bad, you can't come. Spain stayed, so a lot of this was taken up by Spain, but they didn't want, like Germany or other countries coming in and trying to take over land because, they feared that they would try to take over our country. So this is the Monroe Doctrine. So make sure to pause and write that down. That's notes number 78. So pause and go ahead and put here, issued by President Monroe. U.S. would not allow European colonization in the Americas, Latin America, or the Western Hemisphere. And the U.S. would stay out of European wars. Okay, go ahead and pause it and write all that stuff down. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue once you're done. So when you're ready to go on, just press play. There's a video on the Monroe Doctrine. All right, so this is what the Monroe Doctrine basically states. And you can draw this out. You don't have to draw it perfectly, but just put Europe, Africa, put the North America, South America. All right, so basically the Monroe Doctrine, it was an invisible line saying you cannot come here anymore to all the European countries. All right. And I think that was it. Let me check. Yeah, that was the last one. All right, so like I said, make sure you write down your notes. Just pause the video, or I'm going to post the regular PowerPoint as well. That way you can see the regular PowerPoint. All right, so just, do that, okay? Get that done and have your notes ready for when you come back to school. But make sure to watch this video because that way you can have a better understanding. And make sure to watch the videos that were posted on the PowerPoint. All right, they give a lot more information than I can give you here since I'm very limited on time. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.